Hi, I'm Jaclyn.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
Welcome back to the 2021, which is really 2020 Part 2 edition of Caffeinated Crimes.
It's, the world's kind of crazy out there, guys.
Yeah, I remember in our last episode, we're like, well, we're cautiously optimistic, and then 3 days later, it's like, well, there went that. So that was a nice, 5 days of 2021?
Yeah, my mom, had jokingly shared something a few months ago that was like, what if 2021 comes in and says, hold my beer or something to 2020, and it wasn't joking.
Very true.
6 days in, and a bunch of terrorists try to take over the Capitol, so.
Yep, that's...
Because we're going to call them what they are. They're
Yes.
not protesters, they're terrorists, so.
Exactly. Don't send us mail about that, because we don't care. We're not going to change our minds on that. I also saw a meme that was like where you have the workplace accidents board, and it's like, we've gone this many days, and it's like, we've gone this many days without shenanigans, and it's like 5, and everybody just changes it to 0.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we tried. We're not going to write the year off yet. You never know. It can turn around, but maybe not a great start.
No. Well, you know what? No, I'm not going to go there, but I think it's going to get better.
We'll see. We do have a kind of follow-up on last week's episode.
Yes.
So when I was editing, we were talking about Son of Sam laws. And I was hearing us talk, and sometimes this happens when I edit, when I think of something I could add in to us talking. I don't know if you do that or not.
Yes.
But so we were saying how he was making money off of, his books and stuff, and how Son of Sam laws. And then I was like, well, would that apply to him since he was never convicted? And then I was looking up. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're talking about S.A. Sagawa, just in case you're listening to this in a while or listening to us out of order. Just want to make it clear who we're talking about.
Thought I said his name. Definitely did not. My bad. So I was wondering if it would apply to him because he's never been convicted. So would that be another loophole with him? And then for some reason I was looking up the different states, and I found out that a Son of Sam law is not in every state. So it is a federal statute. So if you get charged federally, it will. But there are 5 states. New Hampshire never enacted the Son of Sam. Why is that so hard for me to say?
Son of Sam law. Yeah, that is kind of
hard. It's too early, guys. So they never enacted the Son of Sam statutes. So they just never had it. They're like, nope. A bunch of states have repealed it and then replaced it with something else. I'm not going to list those because who cares? And then 4 states have repealed them and never replaced them, and that's Louisiana, Massachusetts, Missouri, and South Carolina. And I did get that from the freedomforuminstitute.org. So,
yeah, Courtney texted me about that, and it just blew my mind because I really had no idea that was not a national thing in every state, but apparently it's not. So I guess if you want to profit off your crimes, you're going to have to do it in certain states. Weird.
And I know a lot of people, when I was looking them up, a lot of people say it's a violation of your First Amendment right of freedom of speech, but I also think you can still say what you want, you just can't make money off of it. So
yes.
I don't really know about that one, but there are a lot of critiques of it. So if you want to do a deep dive into the Son of Sam laws and stuff, let us know. We can do it for Patreon, or just, if you find anything interesting, let us know.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be a fun Patreon episode in the future. Also, side note, I just noticed this and it kind of creeped me out, so I feel the need to acknowledge it. So as you guys know, I'm in my fairly newish house, so the blinds that are in here were still in here from the previous owners, and this was a child's bedroom, and I'm looking at the blinds and there's clear bite marks on 4 of the blinds. I'm going to show Courtney really quick, guys.
Yeah, that is very obvious bite marks.
Yes, clearly this child is just biting the blinds. I don't know. I don't understand.
I mean, my nephew would bite his crib. There's bite marks that were on his crib. So
yeah,
I guess
but I feel cribs.
The blinds seem kind of high. I don't know how they got there, but
yeah, it's a 6-year-old child biting these blinds.
Yeah, I mean, whatever gets you. 2020 was hard. Whatever helps you cope.
Oh boy. Anyway, sorry guys, just had to point that out.
So I also have a really good Kevin story. Got a lot of good banter for you guys today. So
everyone loves a Kevin story.
everyone loves a Kevin story. So last night, like, 2 of our friends came over just to, like, chill, like, watch the playoff games, whatever. So we're sitting there, and they were asking me about the podcast and, you know, how it's going. And I was, like, talking, and I was like, yeah. And I was like, the one thing, like, I didn't think about was editing and, you know, how it takes time and all this stuff. And they're like, oh, how long does it take you to edit? And Kevin, dead ass, looks at them and goes, well, if she works, like, straight through, like, an hour. An hour. So I'm like, you're telling me it takes me an hour to edit an hour-and-a-half episode? And I was like, Kevin, it takes me like 2 days of like a lot of work. And he was like an hour. Okay, 2 hours. I'm sorry. And I was like, are you delusional? I sit here. You hear me edit like for hours.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Kevin. Oh, Kevin.
I seriously was like, you gotta be shitting me right now. Oh, man.
Sometimes they just have no concept of time or, you know.
Yeah, I think he just zones me out. And he's like, I don't know, it's been like an hour, so you're done. And I'm like, no, it takes a long time.
Or maybe he thinks that each time you do it, you're doing a different episode. So if you only do like an hour chunk at a time, there's a whole episode done. So.
No, Kevin, that was 10 minutes of time. But yeah, so I just had to tell that one on the podcast because I was seriously like, you are seriously trying to tell people that it takes an hour to edit a whole episode. No.
You're like, that's not.
No.
That's not how this works. Oh, boy.
Do you know how many animals and husbands and birds and cars we have in our houses?
Right.
It takes a lot longer.
Oh, boy. Well, hopefully there won't be too many distractions this week. But, you know, you never know. I don't know. Like Courtney said, there's a lot of things going on in the household, so it's always an adventure to see what's going to come out at the end. So
yeah, you never know. So this week we're going to do kind of like we've done before, where we each tell a different story. And so my story, my future brother-in-law sent this to me. It was like a Reddit thread. And so we were going to do it, but once I did the research, I realized there's not a lot out there and it really wasn't enough for like a full episode. So I made Jacqueline go find another one and stole this one. So,
yep.
So I'll be telling this one. The resources I used the Reddit thread he sent me, but she used very good citations in the Reddit thread, like the Charlie Project, the Baltimore Sun, and the Philosophy of Crime. So in 1990, Tu Thi-Cam Tran, and I'm going to go ahead and say I am so sorry if I pronounce this wrong. I spent a long time trying to look at YouTube videos and different things to figure it out because there's no like news article of like someone saying her name. So if it is wrong, please tell me and I will make a correction next episode.
Yes.
Please tell me. So she left the University Center at University of Maryland, Baltimore County to walk to her car and go home, and no one has seen her or heard from her since. So Tu was a 24-year-old student at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I'll probably call it UMBC from now on because that's a lot easier to say.
That's a long college name.
It's a very long college name. And there's like there's multiple University of Maryland, so you kind of have to specify. So I'm like, UMBC, that's what we're calling it.
Yeah.
So she was an information systems major and she was in her senior year. She was quite petite at 4'9", and she only weighed like 90 pounds. She was very tiny. She had a slim build, and she was of Vietnamese descent. She had brown eyes, shoulder-length black hair. She was very attractive, and she was missing a toe. So one of her toes, just that little piggy went home. But they did say this because that is a very identifying thing. So maybe if someone found her, that would be something like, this is unusual. Good to note.
Yeah.
So it had been the Monday after Thanksgiving break. It was November 26th in 1990. And she had attended her classes. And she was wearing a blouse, jeans, and sneakers, along with, she had this very distinctive necklace. It had like white pearl beads and blue stones, and it was formed in like a scallop design. So we will post a picture of it. It's very, very unique. And then her classes finished up around 6:45 p.m. and so she went to hang out with a classmate in the game room of the university. So this was a really common hangout spot for students. You know, between classes or after classes, everyone could just kind of come hang out here. So she hung out until around 8:30 p.m. and she decided that she was going to go home. So the friend she'd met with did say she was in good spirits, and, you know, it is, you know, right after a holiday, and classes are almost over. It's kind of, it's right before finals. It's kind of that sweet spot where you're like, okay, things aren't horrible yet.
It's like that spot between, like, you finished most of your, like, major assignments, but final studying hasn't started yet. So you're kind of in that lull just a little bit.
Yeah. So she left the university center around 8:30 to drive back home to Lanham, and that's about a half an hour south. She lived there with her brother and his family, but she never came home, so she never made it there, and her brother was kind of concerned, so he reached out to campus police and reported her missing. So campus police went to look around, and they did find her car where it was originally parked, and there was like really no suggestion that she'd ever made it back to her car. So, her doors were probably still locked, none of her stuff was in there, it was just how she'd left it.
Do you know, did it say how far away her car was from, like, the game room, like where she was?
There was a map, but I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
I don't think it was too far. I don't think it's too big of a campus. I say that, and then it's a 500-acre campus, I'm about to say. But there is a map I saw on one website, and it didn't seem, like, super far.
Gotcha.
So
I know sometimes, like, college campuses can be huge, so it's like, oh, you may have to walk, like, half a mile or a mile to get to wherever you parked, or it could be, like, the same parking lot, so just curious.
I don't think it was the same parking lot, but it wasn't, like, a huge trek or anything like that. Hopefully I'm not wrong on that, but... So a massive search was organized, and that included the UMBC campus, which was about 500 acres, and the surrounding woods. So canine units and helicopters were used, but there was just no sign of her. And flyers with her name and picture were posted all around campus. So the investigation was handled by UMBC campus police instead of Baltimore County police, because according to Baltimore County police, the university police were fully certified to investigate incidents believed to have occurred on the campus. So Baltimore County police was like, not my problem.
Like, I'm not going to deal with that. That's your issue. Just a missing person. No big deal. You handle that.
Yeah. And I also want to say, too, Baltimore County police and Baltimore City police are two different things, too. Okay. Just in case people didn't know, because it gets complicated.
Oh, boy.
But I don't really bring them up again. I just wanted people to know in their head those are two separate things. So don't think, like, Heart of Baltimore City Police is like, nah, fuck y'all. It's more the county. You can never trust the county.
You need to know who to hate on is what we're getting at.
Yeah, so don't be, tweeting at Baltimore City Police. So UMBC's Director of Media Relations, Louise White, said she didn't think there was any reason to believe Tu had been harmed. But I'm like, you don't know you just know she didn't make it to her car.
Yeah. And, like,
how do you know, like...
Even in instances where there's a missing person and their car is also missing, that's absurd, because it's like, it's still unusual for that person to not, contact someone, but especially when their car is still where they left it when they were intending to go to their car and go home. Like, that's a pretty big red flag that, like, she didn't just go somewhere,
Yeah, and there are really, like, no eyewitnesses in this. Like, no one really ever saw her once she left the game room. No one knows. So she could have easily just been taken, And if you're going to run away, why would you leave your car? How are you going to get around?
Exactly.
Anyway, you just did all that semester of schoolwork just to leave? I don't think so.
No, you gotta get those grades, okay? Like, you gotta wait until December.
Yeah. So the university police were very tight-lipped about their investigation. They would not tell anything at all. And anytime they were asked, they were like, it's an ongoing investigation, and we just refuse to give any details about an active investigation. And they kept going, we have a number of leads we're pursuing, but they still are just not suspecting foul play at all.
That doesn't make any sense. That's so crazy.
Because to me, I'm like, unless, like, somehow Tu came to you and was like, hi, I'm running away, how would you know it's not, why would you not suspect foul play?
Or, like, if she had a history of, like, taking off for days or weeks at a time, which, even so, you can still be concerned because there could still be things that are different, but that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So in a later statement in January 1991, police said they were confident there was no indication of a serial killer or a serial rapist in this case. And they just refused to be more specific, saying that it would be contrary to the public interest and might, quote, jeopardize an ongoing investigation. So you're saying there's no foul play, but you won't say anything because you're going to compromise your investigation? Like, which is, like, if you just think she ran away, which, I mean, like, what other... If you don't think there's foul play, you think she just ran away.
Yeah.
So then it's like, what investigation are you jeopardizing?
Yeah, like, those two things don't add up.
Yeah. So they're just confident there's no serial killer, no serial rapist, there's no foul play, but they still won't say anything because they don't want to jeopardize their ongoing investigation. I don't know. They also said they'd been calling in help from law enforcement agencies both in and out of state and were conducting an exhaustive investigation. And so at this point, they're still saying no evidence of foul play. They don't believe she would have been forcibly taken, but they're also not formally ruling out foul play. So they're just, I feel like they don't know. I feel like they're just like, okay, there's no foul play, but we haven't ruled it out yet.
It sounds almost like they don't want to scare other students into thinking that, like, there's a serial predator on the loose, so they're just like, no, everything's fine. It's like, okay, but maybe it's not. Like, maybe there is a serial predator on the loose and they should be scared.
Yeah, and I mean, the police, I think, still to this day are tight-lipped about it because there's really no information. I don't know if there is a witness who was like, I just saw her get in a car with someone, which you can still be forcibly taken if it looks like you're just calmly getting in a car because someone could have a gun. Like, but yeah, like, I don't know if they have, like, some witnesses who are saying certain things, but they definitely have never told the public in the, 30 years since this case? 40? Yep. 30 years. So a lot of rumors circulated on what happened to Tu. So there were rumors that she'd been kidnapped and murdered. There was a rumor that her body had been found in the woods, that she'd been shot multiple times, and even that there was a killer on campus. But police denied all of them. As we can see, they've been denying every possible outcome besides just running away. So, and a recent event surrounding UMBC really fueled these rumors. So right after Tu's disappearance, a male UMBC staff member disappeared from off campus. And police are like, this is completely unrelated. But people are like, this is kind of weird. Like, two UMBC, related people went missing. Yeah. But it turns out they were right because he was eventually found alive. So this one is unrelated, but that is pretty suspicious within a few months of each other. That both happens. And so students really, really criticized the police's response to Tu's disappearance. Like, as we can see, they're not saying anything, or it doesn't really look like they're trying to do anything. So in March 1991, UMBC students held a Take Back the Night march against sexual violence. And in a speech at this event, a student discussed Tu's disappearance, saying she should not be forgotten and we should not be satisfied with silence. The Retriever's staff editorial of May 1991, in a recap of the school year, which was kind of like in their school book, noted sarcastically, according to what the rumor mill generated, she was abducted by a stranger, maybe two, or someone new. There were cigarette butts in her car, bullet holes and bloodstains, and her mangled corpse had been found just outside the loop, or in the Poughkeepsie River, or in the Baltimore Harbor, and there was a second abduction the following week, and so on and so on. Either that or she was in Cleveland. But if one listened to the police statement soon after, one could divine that she had just up and disappeared without evidence of foul play. It happens sometimes. So they're kind of trying to, sarcastically make fun of, like, the police in this, because it's like, oh, this happened, like, nobody knows. And according to the police, like, oh, she just disappeared. And then after this editorial in May, her disappearance was just never really mentioned again. It seems they do have some of Tu's DNA, and it has been, like, completed and processed, so maybe one day if they do find, a Jane Doe body or something, it can be compared, hopefully. And the Reddit thread I did reference, it was written by a UMBC student, and she'd never heard, like, anyone talk about Tu, and so she started asking some of her classmates, and no one else had heard about her either. And I know it had been 30 years, but I mean, this is still a missing person from your campus. So it seems, she went missing and no one talked about it again, and clearly the police didn't really do anything.
Yeah, that's so crazy that, like, as a student at that campus, you would have no idea about this what you would think would be a high-profile missing case, you know, like you said, even so many years later, that's still something that people would talk about.
And, you know, like, I know at UT, people would all the time be like, well, did you hear about the girl who, like, killed herself in this room or jumped out of the, you know, even if it had been years later and there was no proof that that was, you know, even real.
Yeah.
But no one talks about Tu anymore, and she was never been found, and there's just nothing, and my heart just breaks for her family, because I don't buy that she ran away.
No,
because one, you're a senior in, like, college, you're about to do finals, you're about to be done, you're probably about to have one more semester, you're going to be done with college. She has no, that we know of, history of running away or anything like that. And if you're going to run away, you're going to take your car.
Yeah.
Like, you're not just going to walk away.
Yeah, that's the thing that sticks out the most to me, because even if you could speculate that, well, maybe she just, like, ran off and started a new life, which is pretty far-fetched, but I mean, it does happen, but you would take your car. Like, you wouldn't just leave, even if you abandoned it somewhere later and got a new car, or, like, you just literally walked straight to where and did what?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make any sense. And, you know, not that people always have signs, like, before something like this, but usually, like, in hindsight, her friends or family could look back and say, oh, well, she said or did this odd thing, or this was going on, or whatever. Like, it just seems so absurd that out of nowhere she would just run away.
Yeah, and I don't know what the police know, because even to this day, I mean, it's still technically an open investigation, so they can do that whole, it's an open case, we don't have to tell you anything. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I feel like at some point you would have to release some information, like somebody saw her talking to someone or something. Like, there just has to be something they know to, you know, be so confident that there's no foul play. It just seems botched to me.
And it seems crazy that after 30 years they wouldn't release that information. You know, like, I get initially because they're like, okay, we need to keep this information to ourselves so that way we can, you know, compare and investigate and whatever. But 30 years later, like, okay, clearly you guys aren't solving it, so maybe it's time to release some information to the public and see if anyone else can help, you know?
And, like, not even a year later, they just weren't talking about her anymore. Like, she went missing in November. By May, there was that, like, sarcastic editorial in the yearbook. And then no one really talked about her again.
And then that was it. Wow.
And then to this day, UMBC students don't even know about this woman who went missing on their campus. They just don't even know.
That is crazy and just so sad.
Yeah, it just broke my heart. And there were pictures, and she was just so beautiful, and she had such a bright future. She was going places, and it's so sad that probably because she's not a white female from a rich family, no one really, I mean, it's still open. And that's the shitty part.
Yeah, definitely. So, as Courtney mentioned at the beginning, when Courtney started the research for this episode and realized there wasn't really enough for a whole episode, we decided to do a second case that was similar. So we researched into other missing college students. So we're going to take it back quite a few years for this one. But my information came from the Bennington Banner, also the Charlie Project, and strangeoutdoors.com. So in 1946, an 18-year-old student at Bennington College left for a hike and seemingly vanished into thin air. So Paula Jean Welden was born to William Archibald Welden and Jean Douglas on October 19th, 1928 in Stamford, Connecticut. And William was a well-known industrial engineer, architect, and designer. So as we'll see, Paula was that rich white female, and it still did not end well. So Paula would end up having 3 younger sisters, so she was the oldest. She loved botany, swimming, biking, skating, hiking, camping, square dancing, and playing guitar. So a lot of well-rounded activities, very active, just really seemed to enjoy a lot of different things. And she attended Bennington College in Vermont, where she majored in art. She was a really good student. She did not have a steady boyfriend. I believe she was a sophomore, even though she was only 18. I think they said she was a sophomore. And in the months leading up to her disappearance, she had become more interested in music and botany and was considering changing her major. So, also, Courtney, I didn't realize the time of year that yours took place, because mine also takes place right after Thanksgiving break, which is really weird. But
That is super weird.
Yeah. So on Sunday, December 1st, 1946, 18-year-old Paula finished her second shift at the dining hall at Bennington College, and she then returned to her dorm room at Dewey Hall, where she told her roommate she was going for a hike. So she changed out of her work uniform into a red parka jacket with a fur-trimmed hood, blue jeans, and white sneakers. She was also wearing a small gold wristwatch with a narrow black band. And at the time she left, it was sunny and 50 degrees. So another student, Danny Fager, was at the service station across from the college entrance, and he saw her running up and down a gravel pit before walking off campus and towards Route 67A towards Bennington at 2:30 p.m. So I think they describe it as like if you think about like construction sites or whatever and you see those big like gravel mounds. I guess she was like running up and down one and then left. So that was kind of a weird thing.
Just trying to get warmed up, I guess.
I guess maybe.
Just like warm up those legs and have to hike. I don't know.
Some calf stretches going on before your hike. I don't know. So a local man, Lewis Knapp, picked her up as a hitchhiker at 2:45 and drove her as far as his home, which was located on Route 9 about 3 miles from the Long Trail, which is where Paula had planned to hike. And at around 4 p.m., a man named Ernest Whitman and 3 of his other friends were coming out of a camp at Bickford Hollow and ran into Paula. And she asked them if they knew the length of the trail. They told her it went all the way up to Canada, but they had only walked about 5 miles of it. So she thanked them before proceeding to a bridge that leads up to the trail, and that was the last time that they saw her. There were a few other reports of sightings further up the trail, but the reliability of those is kind of uncertain, so they haven't been confirmed. So that was the last like known sighting of her, was at like the trail entrance. And keep in mind, this was at 4 p.m. in December in Vermont, so it would have been dark by like 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and she's like heading out on this trail. So that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
So this information that I just gave you guys would not be discovered until a couple of days later, so I just want to make that clear that at the time she disappeared, no one had talked to these people yet. So her roommate just knew she went for a hike, and that was that. So Paula did not show up for her classes the next day on Monday, December 2nd. And at the time, students were required to sign out if they planned on being gone past 11 p.m. And Paula had not signed out the night before, so she didn't intend on being gone overnight. So the director of admissions called her father and the state's attorney around noon that day, which in my mind, I'm like, man, in 1946, if you went missing from college, they really they were on it because, you know, now it's like, oh, well, she probably did this or did that. And then 3 days later, it's like, oh, well, maybe I guess we should start looking into it. So it was pretty quick that they were like, okay, something's wrong here. And authorities in New York and Massachusetts were also alerted, and the media began circulating her photo. And friends remembered that one time Paula had mentioned that she wanted to visit the Everett Cave on Mount Anthony. So some students started searching that area that afternoon, but they couldn't find anything to indicate that Paula had been there. And no formal search and rescue effort started that day because they weren't really sure where Paula had gone for her hike. Like, she just told her roommate she was going for a hike. No one knew where she had been. So Paula's roommate reported that Paula had been depressed in the few days leading up to her disappearance because she did not go home for Thanksgiving. Again, this was the weekend of Thanksgiving. But she didn't say why she didn't go home, so that seemed kind of strange to her roommate. But other students in the dorm reported that Paula was, quote, extraordinarily happy Saturday evening. So kind of interesting. Not really sure what that's about.
Mm-hmm.
So a local cab driver, Abe Ruskin, said that he had taken a college student to the bus station Sunday afternoon, but he wasn't sure if it was Paula or not. And the clerks at the bus station weren't able to identify her either, but it had been a busy afternoon and there were several buses that she could have taken, so it was kind of a long shot that they would recognize her anyway. So a woman named Ora Telletier, who was a waitress at a local restaurant, said that she had served a girl who met Paula's description around 9:30 Sunday evening. And she said the young woman was with a drunk and combative man who appeared to be in his mid-20s. And when he went to the counter, the woman signaled for Ora to come to her table, and she asked her how far it was to Bennington. Ora said the girl seemed dazed and that she said she had arrived in Fall River with $1,000, but she had nothing left now and had to get to Bennington. Ora said the girl was not drinking at the restaurant and did not appear to be intoxicated. There's no further information about this sighting. I personally don't think that was Paula because where did the $1,000 come from? You just left that afternoon. It just doesn't really seem to add up.
Yeah.
But in the limited information that's available, that was one of the reports that came out. So the next day, on December 3rd, searches began on the Bennington College campus. Students of that college and Williams College joined the search, as well as local Boy Scouts, members of the Green Mountain Club, and other local citizens. And Bennington College actually canceled classes to allow all the students to search as well. And the manager of Vermont Transit in Burlington said that he would contact all of the bus drivers who went out Sunday afternoon to see if anyone remembered Paula. And at the time, Vermont had no state police, so the searches were just really uncoordinated and disorganized because it was like multiple local sheriff's departments, since they really didn't know where Paula had gone. So there was no central organized search. So Ernie Whitman, who was the man who spoke to Paula at the edge of the trail, came forward about 5:30 Tuesday evening to report their conversation. And so they also received those other unconfirmed sightings from the trail around that time as well. So this is what led them to search the long trail, which, as we now know, is where she was last seen. But at this point, it's more than 48 hours after she had been seen there. And as I mentioned, it was 50 degrees when Paula left in fairly light winter clothing for her hike, but it did start to snow Sunday evening, and the temperature reached 9 degrees. So if she had stayed on the trail, she really wasn't dressed for that kind of weather. But the investigators didn't believe that she could have made it too far on this trail because she would have had to cross a river, and she was only wearing sneakers. And the trail was also surrounded by rocks and water, so it was a pretty narrow path, and then all down the side it was just straight downhill, rocks. It wasn't really somewhere that you could wander off unless you fell, in which case they would probably find you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So searchers did initially believe that she had gotten lost on the trail and was exposed to the elements in her inadequate clothing, but as more time passed with just no signs of her, they began to suspect foul play because, like I said, if she had just wandered off, there wasn't really somewhere that she could go without kind of getting injured, and they would have found her then. So a man who owned a camp on the trail said that 3 servicemen had been by on Sunday and left a suitcase with him. They had not returned for the suitcase, and he said they also were not dressed for the cold weather that evening. And a man at a local clothing store said he sold some clothing to 3 men Saturday afternoon who said they were going hiking. I can't find any additional information about these suspects, so I really don't know what happened with them or the investigation. It was just kind of thrown in the article of okay, they reported these things, and okay, did you talk to them? What did they say? Again, it was the 40s. We don't have a whole lot of information now, but so we don't know if they had anything to do with it or if they were just some random out-of-place people, you know? Mm-hmm. Some people also suspected her father because it was unusual that she did not go home for Thanksgiving, so they thought maybe something had happened between the two of them. And her father also told police that she may have a boyfriend in their hometown and that he should be considered. So nothing really substantial, just kind of lots of, well, maybe this, maybe that. Mm-hmm. So extensive searches on and off the trail continued, and state police from New York and Connecticut were called in to help. And reward money of $5,000 was raised for any information leading to Paula's whereabouts. But the search officially ended on December 15th when there had been no sign of Paula or her belongings. The following May, Paula's father organized 2 more days of searching after the snow had melted, but there were still no traces of Paula found. So her father was really upset by the lack of coordinated searching, so he started lobbying for Vermont to have a state police force, which was created in July of 1947. So they did get on that pretty quickly after this case. So a lot of people attribute their creation to Paula's disappearance. So another local man was questioned a few times as he reportedly told police that he had seen Paula on the trail and supposedly told a friend that he knew where her body was. However, no further information came from this, and there was never any evidence to indicate that he had anything to do with her disappearance. So is this some, crazy person who's just trying to insert themselves in an investigation? I mean, we know all the time that people falsely confess to things they had nothing to do with for who knows whatever reason, not talking about people who are interrogated that lead to false confession, just people who randomly come forward, Mm-hmm. But there have never been any other formal suspects in this case. And author Joseph Citro has dubbed this area the Bennington Triangle because 10 people disappeared in the surrounding areas between 1920 and 1950, and 5 of them were between 1945 and 1950. So a very short period of time in this, like, pretty small area that a lot of people have just disappeared.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, because they said the trail went to Canada, like, is there someone who was, like, waiting, like, somewhere and, like, forcing them over? Because then, like,
yeah,
you know, like, the police couldn't really go into, like, the Canadian territory. I don't know how protected that part of the border was, but that kind of, like, I'm wondering about that, too.
Yeah.
Like, what's happening there?
Yeah, especially with it being, like, so close. Like, they're like, oh, this is, like, the perfect, like, way to lure people. So Paula Jean Welden's case remains open today, and no sign of her or her belongings have ever been found. So essentially, she literally just vanished into thin air. Again, a lot of people do suspect foul play because nothing was ever found. You would think, like I said, with just the design of the trail, that if she had, you know, gotten lost or fallen or anything like that, like, her body would have been found in those extensive searches. And the fact that no signs were found really leads to foul play. Yeah, I don't know. It's also, I mean, her behavior was kind of weird, leaving for a hike at 4 p.m.
Yeah, especially, like, by yourself, and it's about to get dark.
Yeah.
It's a little odd. I know it's, like, a different time in the 1940s, but, like, still, I feel like you'd be like, maybe I shouldn't go by myself at night to hike.
And wearing just, like, you know, a light jacket, and, you know, yeah, it was 50 degrees, but it's Vermont, and she was also from Connecticut. You know, I could maybe understand if she was from, like, a different part of the country where, like, she didn't realize how cold it would get at night, but it's like, you've lived there your whole life. Like, you know that, like, 50 degrees in the day in Vermont in December might get super cold at night, you know? So yeah, she's just leaving ill-prepared. A lot of people point to the weird running up and down the gravel as, like, what is that, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, could be, like, nothing,
was she
but
possibly, like, having some, like, mental health issues at that moment that obviously probably wouldn't have been talked about a lot, you know, in the 40s.
Yeah, I did read a Reddit thread that didn't really have, like, concrete information, just, like, people speculating about what happened. And then some people wondered, like, was she bipolar? Because her roommate said she was depressed, but then other friends said she was extraordinarily happy. So, like, was she, like, in a manic depressive state, you know, and that would explain her poor decision making of leaving so late at night when it's going to get dark. And, I mean, she was also, like, several miles from the college. It's not like she left for, like, a walk around campus when it was getting dark and she could easily go back home. Like, she left to, like, travel. Like, it's not like she could walk back from the trail.
So did she get in, like, her car and drive to the trail, or did she walk from campus to the trail?
She hitchhiked.
Do you know? She hitchhiked?
Yeah,
okay.
So she walked a little bit of the way, and then she hitchhiked for about 3 miles, and then got to the trail.
Yeah. That's just, and it's so weird to me, like, if something, like, it wasn't foul play and something happened to her on the trail, like, I feel like we would have found her.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's very odd.
And there's also speculation that maybe, you know, she did just fall and hurt herself and, like, animals got to her body, but, like, searches started pretty quickly in that area, so I feel like there would have been some trace of her body, you know, even if it wasn't, like, a full body, there were, or clothes or something that would have been found.
Or our little eyewitness guy who saw her on the trail actually kidnapped her, and he's it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just condemning a man on the podcast here. But, or maybe somehow he saw someone else and not her. I don't know. I mean, they said it was confirmed, so I'm trusting him. But maybe he had a little fishy fish.
Yep.
I don't know.
Who knows? And then, of course, there's the weird, you know, the person at the restaurant, and then taking the girl to the bus station. And again, I mean, if you see some stranger, and we'll post a picture of her, she's not, I don't want to say she's very plain looking, but, you know, I mean, she just looks like an average 18-year-old college student. Like, there's nothing about her that would really stand out that a local cab driver or waitress or whatever could be like, oh, yeah, I for sure know it was that person.
Yeah. You
know, so who knows? I mean, there's those 3 different sightings that really it could have been any of that. Like, did she really go to the trail? The trail seems to be the most like, supported theory, because she did tell her roommate she was going for a hike, and because there were the 3 different people that saw her going towards that direction, so that kind of leads it more towards, this is probably, more likely than the random restaurant a ways away or the bus station. But who knows?
Or, like she hitchhiked, so maybe someone she got a ride from came back after, like, hey, I'll come pick you up and take you back to campus, like, when you're done with the trail, like, So there's always that. I mean, this is all speculation. This is, like, straight up speculation corner, but yeah, there's so many possibilities with this one of, like, what could have happened.
And that was another comment in the Reddit thread was, well, she hitchhiked there, so maybe she walked the trail for who knows how long. Maybe she was like, oh no, it's getting dark, maybe I should turn around. And then she tried to hitchhike back, and she got in the car with the wrong person there.
Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, just very crazy, both of these cases, that these women literally just vanished.
Yeah. It is very sad, and I mean, hopefully there will be some resolution in these cases. I mean, doesn't seem likely since they are both so old and nothing's happened, but we definitely do want to remember them and tell their story. If you have other, like, missing person cases where they're not, like, a lot of information, like, let us know. Like, we'll do, like, missing people or anything. I know our podcast isn't that big, but we could still maybe reach one person who knows something. You never know.
Absolutely. Definitely let us know if you guys have suggestions for these, or, ones that have happened in your hometown that are not, like, nationally known. So, Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
This is a tough one because it's been a week.
It has been a week.
And I'm like, what helped today? So, what helped this week? So what I'm going to say is my perk of the week is the internet. Because while the internet can be a deep, dark, horrible place, some of, like, the memes and the discussion that have come out of this whole thing have been good. Like, throughout 2020, my Facebook got a lot of people deleted or hidden because I was like, I don't want to see this. So, and if I don't know you and you're, like, saying some horrible stuff, I'm just going to delete you, or I'm just going to hide you. So my feed was relatively, like, positive, like, leaning towards my views. And then after of just people, like, roasting all these stupid terrorists and, like, so many just, like, making fun of them, and, like, the fact they showed their faces, so now they're all getting arrested. All that, I don't know. That's my perk of the week because it was kind of just a way for me to cope with it. I cope with humor because what else can I do, you know? So it was a very horrible situation, and I don't think the full thing is just over. I think there's going to be more fallout from this.
Definitely.
Also, a little side note, perk of the week, Trump's been banned from Twitter for life. Took way too damn long, but...
That should be all of our perk of the week.
There are going to be no more late night rantings. So, that's my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what's yours?
I agree that I struggled to think of a perk of the week this week, and I hate that I feel that way because I'm like, we still have so much to be thankful and grateful for, but it has been a hell of a week. But I'm going to say, and this has been my perk of the week before, bite me, it's going to be it again, is the library. So since I moved to a new area, I got a new library card, and I just want to say that this lady I talked to on the phone was just the nicest human being that I've ever spoken to. Because I basically called and was like, hey, how does it work? Because I didn't realize that any of the branches were, like, open, which there are a few of them, but most are only doing curbside pickup right now. So I was like, how does it work getting a card, if I can't come in? And she's like, oh, well, you have several options. And so she, like, walked me through the whole thing, and I was able to get the card, like, over the phone. And, so it's super cool with their curbside pickup. You can just go online and request your book, and then they send you an email when it's ready, which for me was the next day. And then you just drive there and you're like, hey, I'm here. And they put it on a table outside, and then you walk up and you pick up your book and you leave. And, I still very much miss browsing in a library. But it's okay. I can browse online and still get my books. And there are a few branches that are, like, open as well. But again, just support your libraries. They're wonderful and amazing places.
Yeah, and I want to say too, like I used to work in a library. When you do get a new card and the librarian's going through all of like the services the library offers, like please just pretend to be interested even if you're not, because there were so many times like when I would issue people new cards and I'm like, we can do this and this, and I just see their eyes glossing over and I'd be like, it's in the packet. Like, I'm not going to waste my breath. It's in the packet if you need to know. Like, some people were, like, extremely interested. And, like, we have so many services people would never think of. Yes. You know, like, we have databases and different stuff like that. It's like, you probably never would have thought of this. So I'm trying to tell you. And they're just like, can I please go get to my computer now? So, you know. But, you know, if they're telling you the services, just be interested. Just look a little interested. Don't let your eyes gloss over. We can tell. So
yes. just act like you might use it some, which you may. I mean, be open to it, because you're like, oh, I'm going to the library for this one thing, and you may not realize that there's so much more available to you. And you know, I also had a little emotional moment when I went there, because it's not too far from, it's still further from my house than my last library, which was a mile walk away, which is nice. But, you know, it's like an 8-minute drive, so I'm like, that's not bad. But it's just like this like little like local like smaller library that reminds me of like the library that like I grew up near, that like I would go to with my grandmother all the time. And I'm like, this is the library I'm going to take my little girl to. And so, you know, it was just very nice.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll have, like, once COVID's over, like story times and stuff. Yes. You can take your kid to and have all that fun stuff. But yeah, libraries are awesome and definitely support them. Their ebook collection has saved me during all this time. I have so many ebooks on hold, but
absolutely. So if you guys want to talk to us about your library or books or anything in general, you know,
send us some good memes, you know.
Yes, we like a good meme. You can find us on Instagram at Caffeinated Crimes Pod. On Twitter at CAF Crimes Pod, that's CAFF Crimes Pod, where you cannot find Donald Trump, but you can find us. You can find us on Facebook at Caffeinated Crimes Podcast, or you can email us at caffeinatedcrimespod@gmail.com.
Yeah, Trump can't be found on any of those things. Probably not Gmail either. He's trying to find his MySpace password. Did you see he was even banned from Spotify?
No.
There was a list. I'll send it to you when we get off. Anyway.
Oh my gosh.
But if you guys want to leave us a review, which Trump probably can't do, go ahead and do that on Apple. Once we get 50 reviews, hopefully 4 or 5 stars and not like 1 stars. But once we get 50 reviews, we're going to pick a person, like draw a name, and they'll get a pin, a sticker, and a $10 gift card to the coffee shop of your choice. Dunkin', Starbucks, local, I don't care. Just please do it.
And if you guys are so inclined and you want to tell us about bonus episodes that you would like, or if you want to get quarterly gifts from us, our $20 tiers just got their quarterly gifts in the mail a couple weeks ago at this point. They're arriving tomorrow in current time. But if you guys want those fun things, you can go on over to patreon.com/caffeinatedcrimes.
Yeah, but in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.